All right, so today we're going to do a test review for our test tomorrow. Here is the first problem. Okay, first things first. Reagan, identify the variable. X. What is not allowing the variable to be alone?
1/6.
Subtract by 1/6. How do I get rid of subtract by 1/6?
Add by 1/6.
Good job. We've got to do the inverse operation. Class, remind me, what does inverse mean?
Opposite.
Opposite. Very good. Okay, so now this cancels out because a negative and a positive will cancel each other out. And I'm left with x equals, class, let's focus on this. What is 4/6 plus 1/6?
5/6.
This is what a lot of people wrote before, 5. Remember, if you're adding fractions, your answer is going to come out as a fraction. So the answer should be 5/6. If your board doesn't look like this, please erase it and fix it. Now, I've got to check it. Remember, when we're checking it, we're just rewriting that original problem. But instead of x minus 1/6, what will I plug in for the x, class?
5/6.
5/6, the answer. So 5/6 minus 1/6 equals 4/6. Let's work on this part right here. Class, what is 5/6 minus 1/6?
4/6.
Does 4/6 equal 4/6?
Yes.
Give yourself a mini check mark. This idea right here that I'm teaching you was in your flipped classroom, the 4.2 flipped classroom, okay? But here's what I want to remind you of. If you have a number next to a letter, what does that mean, class? Multiply. That's 3 times m. What is this? 5 times x. So if I were to look at this right here, what does that mean? 4/5 times y. How do I get rid of 4/5 times y? You divide, okay? Now here's the deal. We have learned before that we are not allowed to divide fractions, okay? So if I was to write this over here, that means 16, I could say over 1, divided by 4/5. But remember, we can't divide fractions, so what method do we have to use?
KFC.
We have to use the KFC method, where you keep the first one, flip the second one, and change the operation. Now, guys, that's a lot of work. So if you remember in the flipped classroom, I taught you something different. Here's the shortcut that I taught you before. Instead of doing all that work, you can multiply by the reciprocal. Guys, what's the reciprocal of 4/5? 5/4. Remember, what you do to one side,
Let's do to the other.
so I'm going to multiply by 5/4 over here. It will be helpful if I just put that over 1. Okay? What happens to this right here? It's all going to cancel out. Those are 1s, those are 1s, and I'm just left with a y. Drop down your equal sign. Look right here. A lot of you, your boards look real crazy. Drop that equal sign directly down below, okay? Now I can cross reduce over here. What happens to the 16 and the 4? It becomes a 4, and this becomes a 1. Now let's just focus on the numerator. What's 4 times 5? 20. Then we focus on the denominator. What's 1 times 1? 1. Do I need to leave it as 20 over 1? No. Simplify the answer. What's the answer simplified? Just a 20. Okay, so the answer is y equals 20. Some people were saying they didn't understand how to check it. Remember, 4/5 y equals 16. All I did was I took the original problem and brought it down here. Instead of a y, what do I plug in? 20. But this is what I saw. Some people just put a 20 here and were like, I don't know what to do. What does it mean when a number's next to a letter? Multiply. So that means I am multiplying, and I could put this over a 1 if I want. Now that can be cross-reduced. So this becomes a 1, that becomes a 4. Multiply the numerators, what do you get? 16. You technically get 16 over 1, but we're just going to simplify it to 16. Class, does 16 equal 16? Yes. Give yourself a mini check mark because it did check out. All right, so with this one, we're solving a 2-step equation. Remember, we have to get rid of the multiply by 2 and the subtract by 5. In this case, it does have a best friend, a number you want to keep together as long as possible, okay? So don't touch this 2. In our notes, we learned you have to either add or subtract first and then multiply or divide. So looking at this, I have to get rid of subtract by 5 first. What is the inverse, or what is the opposite of subtract by 5? Add by 5. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides. This cancels out. I'm left with 2c equals what, guys?
14.
14. Now the 2 must leave. How do I get rid of that 2?
Divide by 2.
Very good. You have to divide by both sides. Remember, we use a fraction bar to show that we are dividing. And most of you, I could see, got c equals 7. All right, same idea here. We're not going to touch the 3m yet because that letter, or the number is attached to the letter. Okay, so I have to get rid of add by 7. How do I get rid of add by 7? Very good. That's the inverse, or that's the opposite. So we get rid of it this way. Drop down 3m equals. This is where people had some problems. Am I adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing here? Okay, I'm adding. I have to add those two together. Remember the rule. Same sign, add and keep. Different sign, subtract and take the sign of the larger number. Guys, do I have the same sign or a different sign here? Same sign. Add the numbers, which would be 15. Keep the sign. A lot of people looked at that and said, oh, there's 2 negatives. That's an even number of negatives, so my answer will be positive. That's the rules for multiplying. So be careful. Here, we have the same sign, add the numbers, keep the sign. Now I've got to divide by 3. And what's my answer?
M equals -5.
-5, because now we focus on here, there's only one negative. That's an odd number of negatives, which means my answer has to be negative. Write the word sentence as an equation. I'm going to show you some things that I just saw some people that are wrong, okay? The sum of a number n and 3 is -8. This is what I saw, and I want you to see if you can tell me what the 2 problems are. Who can tell me what's wrong with what I just did? Raise your hand. Luke, what's one mistake?
Well, number one, they put the wrong variable.
The wrong variable. This says the number n. So, some of you would have seen yesterday, make sure you put an n, okay? Pay attention to those little details. There's still something else wrong with this. What else is wrong with this? Autumn.
There's no negative.
Good job, okay? That says -8, so we've got to make sure to put the negative. A lot of times people neglect the tiny details, and that will take off points, all right? So it should be n plus 3 equals -8. All right, for this one, I had probably half of you get this correct. Guys, this is on that blue words into math paper. What does the word difference mean?
Minus.
Subtract. The difference of a number c, so I'm going to put c first. C minus 5 equals 12.
Man, I got that wrong.
All right, on these kind of problems, here's what's happened on the quiz. Some people, I feel, looked at it and thought, oh, Miss Forpaul forgot her parentheses. So you just kind of added it in and said, okay, -5 times -7 is 35. But folks, I did not put parentheses there for a reason. Instead, this is adding and subtracting negatives together. What's the rules for adding and subtracting negatives? Same sign, add and keep. Add the numbers, don't forget, keep the sign. Here's what some of you just did. You saw, oh, there are 2 negatives. That means my answer is positive. Guys, that's only the rules whenever you're multiplying and dividing. So the correct answer was -12. All right, I think everybody got this one correct. 7 times -2. What is it, guys?
-14.
-14. All right, so for this modeling real life, it says Ethan planted a tree that is 18 inches tall. If the tree grows 3 inches each year, how long will it take for the tree to reach a height of 54 inches? You must show an equation, okay? So just remember, whenever I'm saying you must show an equation, that simply means you have to have plus or minus, multiply or divide, a variable, and an equals sign. So let's see what we can come up with for our equation. If we start off and it says he started off with a tree that's 18 inches tall. All right, we're going to start with an 18. Then it tells us if the tree grows 3 inches each year. If it's growing, should I add, subtract, multiply, or divide it? Add. It is growing how many inches? 3. Is that it? Total. It's just going to grow 3 inches, the end. No, it's 3 inches each year or per year. If it's growing continually per year, what should I do with that? I'll say y for year. Add, subtract, multiply, or divide the y. I have to multiply it, okay? So think about it. If it was 1 year, 3 times 1, 3 inches. If it were 2 years, 3 times 2, 6 inches. If it was 3 inches per 3 years, it would be 9 inches, okay? So this shows us 3 times y is per year. Then it says, how long will it take the tree to reach a height of 54 inches? I want it to equal 54 inches. So this is what you want your equation to look like. If your board doesn't look like this, I want you to fix it. Now, we need to solve for y. What should I get rid of first, class? 18. What is this 18? Add, subtract, multiply, or divide by 18. What is that? Add, okay? So technically there's a plus here. How do I get rid of add by 18? Subtract by 18 on both sides. Okay, negative 18, positive 18, that cancels out, and I'm left with 3y equals, class, what's 54 minus 18? 36. How do I get y by itself? Divide by 3 on both sides. Here's what many people told me. 12 inches. How many of you got 12 inches? Let's go back to what the question asks. It says, how long will it take? What should it be? 12 years. Be careful with those units attached. Okay, the correct answer is 12 years. All right, for the final problem today, Dr. Kinder spent $23.85 at the bookstore on one book and some magazines. The book costs $12.60, and the magazines cost $2.25 each. That's a key word right there. How many magazines did Dr. Kinder buy? You must show an equation. All right. Do we know the total amount that he spent? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. How much did he spend?
$23.85.
Very good. So $23.85 is what he spent. Okay. That is going to equal the rest of all this mess that we come up with. Okay. First off, how much was his book?
$12.60.
$12.60. It says he also bought something else. If he bought something else, should I add, subtract, multiply, or divide that extra amount that he bought?
Add.
I've got to add it. How much was the next thing he bought?
$2.25.
Now, do we know how many of those he bought?
No.
No. If he bought one, it would be $2.25. If he bought two, I would add $2.25 plus $2.25, right? Instead of adding $2.25 a whole bunch of times, I can multiply it by a variable. The variable I'm multiplying it by is an M or anything. I'm putting M for magazine, okay? Now it says, how many magazines did he buy? The whole goal is to get this M by itself. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of the $12.60. How do I get rid of that? I have to subtract $12.60 on both sides. Drop down your equal sign. This cancels out. On the left side, I'm left with 225M. I mean on the right side. Guys, on the left side, what is this answer? $11.25. Now we need to get M by itself. How do I do that?
Divide by 2.
Divide by 225 on both sides.
Which will equal.
All right, guys, what's the answer?
$5.
5 magazines. We'll squish that in there. All right, guys, make sure you study over this for your test tomorrow.